Today is Christ the King Sunday, or Reign of Christ Sunday. And so our scripture is from the Gospel of John, and it's chapter 18, verses 33 through 37. And if you'd like to follow along in your bulletins, you're welcome to do so. Let us hear these words. Then Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you ask this on your own? Or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice."
My training in the area of homiletics teaches me to think about images that might relate back to any given biblical text. And when I consider the story of Jesus' conversation with Pontius Pilate in chapter 18 of John's Gospel, I go to a rather unusual news story that gave me an image. This is a news story from Naples that was back on March 18th of this year. At 2:30 in the afternoon on March 18th, a resident of Naples by the name of Alejandro Otero was in his home when all of the sudden 2 pounds of space debris came crashing through his roof. Upon examination by NASA, this space debris came from the International Space Station, and thankfully, Otero and no member of his family got hurt in the incident. But frankly, that's what I see here. 2 kingdoms in collision. That which is of this world and that which is totally not of this world. Walk back with me into the story. Immediately prior to Christ's crucifixion, the claim has been made that Christ is King of the Jews. The nation of Israel, the land of Judea, because of the way in which Roman law operated, were not able to punish Jesus for this identity or for this claim. And so you'll recall they handed Jesus over to Pontius Pilate, who then interrogates Jesus in this moment in the Passion narrative. Pontius Pilate asks him the question, "Jesus, are you a king?" Jesus responds back to Pilate, "Yes, I am a king, but my kingdom is not of this world." And it's at this moment that Pilate, who has a very narrow understanding of who Jesus is, who has been shuffling around politically between Judea and Rome, begins to realize that Jesus is making a claim that, quite frankly, is out of this world. And my sense is that in this moment in this text, I hear all kinds of hope. For my sense is what Jesus is sharing back with Pilate is that he is the higher hope. He is the king above all kings. His politics transcends all the kings, queens, kingdoms, empires, and politics of that world and of ours. It must have felt for Pilate like space debris was crashing into the governor's palace, frankly. For when it comes to what's going on here with Pilate and his desire for power, I recall a wonderful piece of writing by a theologian with a UCC background. His name is Walter Brueggemann. And he says that at this moment in Pilate's life, what's on display are the three characteristics that always characterize biblical empires and empires over time. The first is that they commoditize power and they commoditize possessions. The second is that empires will create channels to be sure that those commodities flow inward toward the empire. And then third, they will violently defend those channels. But what Jesus is doing by making this claim that he is the king above all kings, that his kingdom is not of this world, is he is embodying back to Pilate just how different his kingdom is. He is saying, I am not for profit nor for power. I have not created channels that flow toward myself. In fact, my kingdom is defined by the antithesis. My love and grace flow to Jew and Gentile. And I, Jesus, have absolutely no desire to teach my disciples to violently defend those channels because my kingdom is not of this world. And frankly, I don't know about you, but when it comes to my own spiritual life and journey toward Thanksgiving and Christmas in the world in which I live, this brings me so much hope, a higher hope. For I live in a world where so much that is powerful is sought after. I live in a political world where so often the channels of power flow back to different people and individuals that are not out in the community. And I live in a world that can be oh so violent. A world at war in at least 3 different places and maybe even more. And part of what this text conversation reminds me is that amidst it all, I have a higher hope. There's a king above all kings who transcends all that seeks to bring me down, especially when I watch the news and experience what is going on in the life of our world. You know, I learned something very interesting this week about President Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln put a whole lot of value on the reign of Christ. As Pastor Angela mentioned, this is Reign of Christ Sunday, and we wear white to celebrate Jesus being the king, not just over Judea and over the Roman Empire, but being the king over the entire cosmos. And Lincoln is a fascinating character to study in American history, frankly, when it comes to his spirituality, is that he is our only president who did not formally affiliate with any Christian denomination. And yet, as scholars are quick to point out, he is certainly one of our most spiritual presidents and by far and away our most biblically literate president. And in the days leading up to the Civil War and during the Civil War and all that was going on with our nation and Lincoln trying to hold everyone together in those moments, he had a line that he would often repeat to himself in his prayer walks. He would say, "Christ, I must believe that you loom above it all. Christ, I must believe that you loom above it all. Beyond the North and South, beyond Republicans and Democrats, beyond Judea and Rome, Christ looms above it all." And what a higher hope that is for us. I know that oftentimes as I journey forth toward Thanksgiving, I struggle to find a gratitude and joy, especially when I watch the news and I consider what's going on in the world around me. And I learned a little bit of something in my Bible study a couple of weeks ago from a parishioner who was talking about the relationship between our spirituality and our health. And he was talking a little bit about the Mayo Clinic's handbook for happiness. As many of you know, the Mayo Clinic has been researching and studying a lot in this area of the intersection of spirituality and health. And part of what the researchers at Mayo found out when it comes to gratitude is that very happy people all share a common characteristics. They have, according to the Mayo Clinic, an uncanny ability to identify what is happening that is right within what is going wrong. And what Jesus does for me in this dialogue with Pilate is he echoes back my higher hope. What is happening that is right within all that is around me that seems to not be going right or that may be wrong? Some of you may know that in a few weeks, and in fact on January the 12th, Will Willimon, a famous preacher, is going to be coming to NaplesUCC to share sermons at both of our worship services. And the book that put Willimon on the map, that he wrote theologically back in 1982, it was published, was an argument for how the church should understand itself. He said the primary phrase by which the church ought to understand itself is that of resident aliens. That we are people who are in this world, but we claim an attachment to or an affiliation with the kingdom of heaven that is not of this world. That we have a higher hope above it all the kings, all the queens, all the politics, all that is around us. Our higher hope is the King of Kings. I'll close with a final personal story. Earlier this week, I was walking out to my car in the parking lot, and I was having one of those days where I was a little bit down about everything that was going on in my world and in our world. And sometimes when you're the minister, you feel as though the church is a little bit of the little guy in the face of so many complex problems. And I looked up atop the steeple, and as many of you are aware over the years, there was an eagle atop the steeple who was perching up there. So I was feeling a little bit lonely, so I decided to call him on my cell phone. And I asked him, I said, Mr. Eagle, what are you seeing from up top there? He said, Pastor Mark, as I look around the world, I see so much hurt, I see so much pain, I see so much disunity. But I want you to know from this position that you have a higher hope. And I said, Mr. Eagle, thank you for your encouragement. And he said, but I want to share with you something else before you go. I said, what's that, Mr. Eagle? And he said, you sure do have an unusual people beneath that steeple. And then he began to share back with me that they love, they help, they seek peace, they seek justice, they care for the environment, they are compassionate, they are generous, they are extending themselves in the community. Mr. Eagle then said, preacher, it's almost as though they are alien. And I said, you're right, Mr. Eagle. What we're doing here is not of this world.